Today we're talking about how to front load your work 401k or your work retirement account in the early part of the year. I'll share 3 different examples of how you could implement this in your own life. Stay to the end where I share mistakes to avoid. Hi, I'm Jessica, and I love talking about financial freedom after experiencing burnout early on in my pharmacist career. On this channel, I talk about passive income and simplifying to combat feelings of burnout and stress in your life. I also share openly about my burnout story and how we paid off massive student loan debt on our way to financial freedom. Make sure to watch those videos as well. As many of you know, I work full-time as an associate professor at a university here in California, and I'm a small business owner where I create content here on YouTube and the podcast. I internationally keynote speak and coach different people. I'm going to focus on the work 401k in this video. If you'd like to learn more about how to retire early or how to pay off massive student loan debt, make sure to watch those separate videos as well. I also shared a video where I talked about how to approach the order of investing towards financial freedom and retiring early, and that order is really important, so make sure you also watch that video. Now, many people in the United States have some type of retirement account offered by their employer. Mine is their traditional 401k, and the steps I'm going to talk about today to contribute a large portion of money to this account early on in the year, or all of the money early on in the year, can apply to many of these different types of accounts. So just make sure you understand what one you're contributing to and what one your employer offers. The first step in contributing a large portion of your income into your employer retirement account is first checking if your employer matches your contributions to the retirement account. Now, many employers will do a match, some do not. It depends on your benefits and compensation package. Now, if your employer does match, it is important to check if they match up to a certain dollar amount or if they require you to contribute every single paycheck throughout the year. Now, for my specific scenario, my work does match. It has a 4% employer match, and it does require you to contribute every single paycheck, 26 paychecks throughout the year in order to receive the employer match. And this is really important because since my employer requires each paycheck to have a certain contribution, and for them to match that contribution, that means I need to contribute every single paycheck throughout the year to maximize that benefit. If I decide to front load my entire 401k through my employer in the first 3 months, then I'd be missing out on the employer match portion of it for 9 months of the year, which would be, a few $1,000s I'd be missing out on. So it is important you understand how your employer matches, whether it's per paycheck or up to a certain dollar amount. If it's up to a certain dollar amount, that means that you could front load your entire work 401k early on in the year within the first 2 or 3 months, depending on your situation. And we're going to go through some examples of that today. Now, when I say to contribute a large portion of income into your retirement account early on in the year, that means for the year 2022 that this video is being recorded, the maximum contribution limit is $20,500 for people who are traditional age. And if you're older, you're able to do a catch-up contribution as well. I'm not going to talk about that today, but it is important to note that the maximum 401k contribution changes each year, so you want to make sure what that is before you do your calculations. Now, assuming that $20,500 and assuming that you want to contribute it early on in the year, whether it's in the first 2 or 3 months or in the first 6 months, then we will do some calculations to figure out how you can do that. I'm going to give you 3 different examples today. So the first example is contributing a large portion, at least half of that money within the first 3 months of the year. So let's say you need to contribute $20,500. So you want to contribute $10,000 to $12,000 of that within the first 3 months or 6 paychecks. For a traditional pharmacist who's making between $120,000 to $150,000, that means you could contribute a larger portion, let's say about 30 to 40% of your paycheck each paycheck. Let's say you're getting 26 paychecks a year, and you contribute 30 to 40% of your paycheck over the first 6 paychecks, and that means you'll front load that 401k account with about $10,000 to $12,000. And then you reduce that contribution to about 7 to 10% of your paycheck for the remaining 20 paychecks during the year so that you make sure you get your employer match. And this is the scenario that is working for me personally because I do need to contribute all 26 paychecks to get my employer match. So I do contribute about 30 to 40% of my paycheck up front in the first 6 paychecks and then reduce that contribution to about 7 to 10% of my paycheck throughout the rest of the year to make sure that I contribute $20,500 as close to that dollar amount as possible. And we'll talk about how we get close to that dollar amount and some mistakes to avoid later on in this video. The next example is to fund the entire account within the first 3 months of the year over the first 6 paychecks. So that means that instead of doing a percentage, I'm going to do an actual number amount. So we'll take $20,500 maximum contribution for 2022 and divide that out by 6 paychecks. And that means we'll need to contribute $3,416 per paycheck in order to maximize our contribution in the first 3 months of the year. And this is definitely something you could be doing. Maybe you plan to leave your job early on in the year, or maybe you're a contract worker and you know that your contract is ending early on in the year and you want to front load all of this early on. It just means that you could be funding your emergency fund before this, at the end of the previous year. So to make sure that you have enough money to live on while most of your paycheck or a large portion of your paycheck is going into your 401k retirement account early on in 2022. Now, let's say you don't want to be as aggressive and you want to fully fund this account within the first 6 months of the year or 13 paychecks, and your employer matches to the dollar amount instead of per paycheck, so you're able to do this, or you have no employer match, so you're also able to do this. So that means you'll contribute $1,577 per paycheck so that you maximize that $20,500 contribution through the year. And this is also a great way to front load the account, in the first 6 months. Now remember, front loading your 401k account or your retirement account is really beneficial because it's really about investing early and often. And a lot of times investing earlier on in the year means that you'll have more potential for growth to come, because investing in January, February, March instead of in November, December timeframe, a lot of times you'll see a little bit more growth in the stock market and your index funds, your mutual funds that you invest in, so that it does make it worthwhile to invest earlier rather than later. And this is also thinking about lump sum investing versus dollar cost averaging. I'm not going to go into details about that today, but overall, a lot of times the research does show that you are a little bit more positive, a little bit better return on investment if you invest earlier rather than later. And that's why I am a big believer in front loading your accounts if you have the financial means to do it. Okay, so now on to things to remember if you're wanting to front load your retirement account so you don't make mistakes later on. The first thing to remember is most employer retirement accounts require you to put in a percentage of your paycheck versus a dollar amount. And this gets really confusing because maybe you're not paid the same exact amount every paycheck, depending on how many days you work in your setting, or you are getting a raise early on in the year and it hasn't actually been finalized. So you don't actually know the percentage that you want to contribute, and the percentage could change each paycheck. So please take that in consideration. I think it's really unfortunate because I'd prefer to put in a dollar amount from each paycheck versus a percentage. And that percentage is usually a whole number. It can't be a decimal place type of a number. So we do want to watch that so that you're not over contributing to the account and going over that maximum contribution limit. And you might need to change that percentage throughout the year. And usually takes about 1 paycheck for that change to go into effect. The next mistake to avoid is contributing your entire paycheck to the account. Most companies limit the contribution to 75% of your paycheck. And that's because for many of us working here in the United States, a portion of your paycheck is going to pay your medical healthcare insurance premiums, or your life insurance premiums, or the state disability insurance, different things like that that could be coming out of your paycheck. So you don't want to leave no money there to pay those important things in your paycheck for yourself or your family members. So I would also recommend not contributing 100% or 95% of your paycheck. Usually anywhere up to 75% is a reasonable status. Typically, your contribution is based on a whole percentage number versus a dollar amount. And this can make it really confusing for you because you can't contribute 7.5%. It either needs to be 7% or 8% of your paycheck. And it can be a little bit more difficult to do the math on that. So thinking about that, making sure that you don't over contribute, but you're also contributing enough where the percentage is reasonable for each paycheck. This can get a little bit more complicated if each paycheck is a different number for you based on when you work or what differentials you're getting at work based on the timing of your work setting versus a salaried type of position. So please be mindful of that and how you're calculating each of those. Another calculation would be if you're getting a raise early on in the year. Sometimes that raise does not go into effect for the calendar year until February or March. That is what my work setting does, where we do get a raise that is effective January 1st of the year, but we actually don't find out what the raise is until mid-February, and then we're back paid on that raise once we find out about it. So there might be some paychecks that might be contributing a little bit more when you do receive that back pay and you're not exactly sure when that back pay is going to come onto your paycheck. So just be mindful of that because that can also throw a little bit of timing off or a little bit of over contribution from that paycheck into your retirement account. Are you funding your 401k or your retirement account early on in the year? If so, comment below with your own story and example. I would love to hear more about it. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel for weekly advice, and make sure that you're also getting our free resources on our financial well-being starter kits and other resources on passive income and simplifying your life. Until next time, cultivate joy.